The storm didn't begin in the sky. It began in my father's eyes. Cold, decided, unapologetic. I stood in the doorway of the house I grew up in, holding my 6-month-old baby tight against my chest. His tiny fingers were wrapped around my scarf, trembling, not from the cold yet, but from my shaking body. Behind me, thunder cracked so loudly it rattled the windows. Rain slammed against the roof like stones. My father didn't flinch. "Leave," he said, pointing toward the darkness outside. "Take your mistake and go." I looked at him, waiting, hoping for something. A pause, a doubt, a sign that he was still my father. Instead, he looked past me, at her. My younger sister stood behind him, dry, warm, perfectly styled. Her arms were crossed, lips curved in that familiar half-smile, the one she always wore when she was winning. "Dad," she said, softly, "you're doing the right thing. She's always been a problem." That was it. Years of favoritism, years of silence, years of swallowing my pain, all ending in one word: leave. "Please," I whispered, "there's a storm. Just let us stay the night." My father's jaw tightened. "You should have thought about that before ruining this family," he snapped. "You embarrassed us, had a child without a husband. You chose this." The door slammed behind me, locked. I stood there, staring at the wood grain, my reflection warped in the glass. My baby whimpered, his face scrunching as a gust of icy wind cut through my coat. Then the rain hit us, hard, merciless. Within seconds, my clothes were soaked. My shoes slipped in the mud as I staggered down the front steps, clutching my baby like he was the last piece of my heart, because he was. Lightning split the sky. I didn't cry. Not yet. I walked down the long driveway, past the gate with our family name carved into stone, past the home I cleaned, cooked in, sacrificed for, while my sister was praised for breathing. Every step felt like betrayal. I remembered being 10 years old, standing in the same rain, holding an umbrella over my sister while my father walked beside her, dry and smiling. "Good girl," he'd told me back then, but never for long. Now there was no umbrella, only the storm. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from my sister. "Don't come back. Dad chose me. He always will." I stared at the screen, rain blurring the words, something inside me finally cracking. I typed nothing. I kept walking. By the time I reached the main road, my baby's cries had turned weak. My arms ached. My lips were numb. I checked my phone again. No signal. Of course. A car passed by, spraying water onto the sidewalk. Then another. No one stopped. I sat under a flickering bus shelter, pulling my jacket tighter around my son, whispering apologies into his damp hair. "I'm here," I told him, my voice breaking. "Mama's here, I promise." I didn't know where we'd sleep. I didn't know how we'd eat tomorrow. What my father didn't know, what no one in that house knew, was that the envelope tucked deep inside my bag wasn't trash. It wasn't hope. It was a legal document, one I hadn't opened yet, because I was afraid. Afraid that if I believed it and it wasn't real, I'd shatter completely. But as the storm raged around us, my baby shivering in my arms, I finally pulled it out. Rain-soaked, sealed, stamped by an international law firm. I tore it open with shaking fingers, and the first line changed everything. "This letter confirms you are the sole heir to the Laurent Global Trust, valued at approximately $2.3 billion USD. My breath vanished. Thunder roared. My baby fell silent, as if the world itself had paused. I stared at the paper, rain dripping onto the ink, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it would drown out the storm. $2.3 billion. The fortune my late mother never told my father about, the company she built in silence, the inheritance she protected from the man who just threw us into the rain. I laughed. A broken, breathless laugh. Not because I was happy, but because fate had the darkest sense of timing. Behind me, in the distance, the lights of my father's house glowed warm and golden. He thought he'd erased me. He had no idea that tonight was the last time he'd ever have power over me. And the storm? It wasn't ending. It was just beginning. The storm followed us into the city. By the time dawn broke, the rain had softened into a cold, relentless drizzle, the kind that seeps into your bones and refuses to leave. I sat on a cracked vinyl chair in the corner of a 24-hour cafe, my baby finally asleep against my chest, his tiny breaths fogging my damp coat. The waitress didn't ask questions. She just brought hot water and an extra towel. I dried my son first. Always him first. Only then did I look again at the letter. $2.3 billion. It still felt unreal, like words borrowed from someone else's life. My mother's name, printed neatly at the bottom of the page, made my throat tighten. She died when I was 17, quietly, suddenly. My father had cried loudly, publicly, then taken control of everything she left behind. Or so he thought. My hands trembled as I read further. Your mother placed the trust beyond marital access and family claim. No individual except you has legal authority. I closed my eyes. She knew. She knew what he was. She knew what my sister would become. And she trusted me. A second document slipped from the envelope. A card, simple and white. Evelyn Ross, Senior Trustee. Call any time, day or night. I hesitated. I looked down at my son, his lashes resting softly against his cheeks. 6 months old, already kicked out of his own grandfather's house like unwanted baggage. I pressed call. She answered on the second ring. Ms. Laurent, a calm, professional voice said, I've been waiting for you. That single sentence steadied me more than any blanket ever could. Within hours, everything changed. A black SUV pulled up outside the cafe. The driver stepped out, holding an umbrella over the door. People stared. I didn't. Inside the car was warmth, silence, safety, and something else, respect. At a private residence across town, temporary, Evelyn explained, I bathed my baby, fed him, and laid him down on clean white sheets. When I finally sat alone in the quiet, the exhaustion hit me like a wave. I cried then. Not loud, not dramatic, just tears sliding down my face as years of being second best finally drained out of me. That afternoon, Evelyn laid everything out. The companies, the offshore accounts, the board seats my mother held anonymously. My father's construction firm, one of many subsidiaries quietly funded by my mother's empire. He had been living off her shadow. And my sister? She worked in one of the luxury brands under the trust, mid-level, replaceable, proud of a title she didn't realize could vanish with one signature. Do you want to reveal yourself now? Evelyn asked gently. We can make a public announcement. I shook my head. No. I wanted them comfortable. I wanted them confident. I wanted my father to sleep peacefully, believing he'd won. So I learned. I learned how power moves, how silence terrifies more than shouting, how people who throw others away never look down because they assume they'll never see them again. Weeks passed. I didn't call my father. I didn't respond to my sister's smug messages. Then one evening my phone buzzed, a family group chat I hadn't been removed from yet. Dad, your sister is getting engaged. Formal ceremony. Be decent and attend. I laughed. Out loud. They wanted me there, alone, disgraced, crawling back for scraps. They had no idea I now owned the building they'd host the engagement in. No response? Evelyn asked, reading my expression. Oh, I'll attend, I said calmly, just not the way they expect. The night of the engagement arrived. Crystal lights, white roses, soft music. My father stood tall, shaking hands, bragging about how far our family had come. My sister sparkled, soaking in attention, basking in approval. Then the doors opened, and I walked in. Not soaked, not shaking, not broken. A tailored coat, quiet confidence, my baby asleep in my arms, wrapped in cashmere. Heads turned. Whispers followed. My father's smile faltered. My sister's face drained of color. I met my father's eyes across the room, holding his gaze steadily. He didn't recognize the woman I had become, but he would, very soon. Because tonight, the storm wasn't outside anymore. It was standing right in front of him. And in my bag, resting beside my son, was a signed document that could erase everything he thought he owned. I just hadn't decided yet how painful I wanted the reveal to be. The music didn't stop when I walked in. That was the first thing I noticed. People always think revenge is loud, shouting, glasses shattering, dramatic slaps. But real power doesn't announce itself. It waits. My father recovered quickly. He always did. He straightened his tie, forced a smile, and leaned toward my sister. "She came," he whispered, irritation barely hidden. "Ignore her." Ignore me, just like he always had. I moved through the room slowly, greetings polite, posture calm. People sensed something was different. They couldn't name it, but they felt it. Confidence has weight. It bends the air around it. I stopped near the stage. Evelyn stepped beside me, dressed simply, professionally. A few executives recognized her immediately. Their faces tightened. That's when the murmurs grew louder. My sister noticed first. She followed our line of sight, her smile freezing when she saw Evelyn. Panic flashed across her eyes, fast, raw. She leaned toward my father. "Dad, that woman, she's from Laurent Global." His face drained of color. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. The host tapped the microphone. "May I have everyone's attention?" Evelyn nodded at me. I stepped forward. The room quieted. "I won't take much of your time," I said, my voice steady, carrying effortlessly. "I was invited tonight as family, but I'm here on business." Gasps rippled. My father stepped toward me, his smile cracking. "This isn't the place for your games." I looked at him, really looked. The man who threw me and my baby into a storm without a second thought. "This," I replied softly, "is exactly the place." Evelyn took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Evelyn Ross, Senior Trustee of Laurent Global Trust. Effective immediately, all subsidiary funding tied to Mr.'s construction firm is suspended." Silence. Then chaos. My father's face went gray. "That's not possible." "It is," Evelyn said calmly, "because the sole heir has exercised her authority." All eyes turned to me. I met my father's gaze. "I'm the heir, the one you threw out." My sister stumbled backward. No, that's not true. She's lying." Evelyn handed the host a folder. Screens behind the stage lit up with numbers, logos, documents. $2.3 billion. Board control, ownership, signatures. My mother's signature. My signature. My father fell into a chair like his legs had forgotten their job. You were nothing. You needed us." I shook my head. "I needed a father. You needed my mother's money." The room buzzed. Phones came out. This would be everywhere by morning. My sister burst into tears, grabbing my arm. "Please, I didn't mean it. You know how Dad is. We're family." I gently removed her hand. "You watched me stand in the rain with my baby. You texted me not to come back." I glanced down at my son, still sleeping peacefully. "This is my family." I turned back to Evelyn. "Proceed." She nodded. Effective tonight, Mr. is removed from all boards. Properties under trust ownership will be reclaimed within 30 days. My father looked up at me, eyes red. "I'm your father, and I was your daughter, once." I walked toward the exit. No shouting, no begging, just silence heavy enough to crush them. Outside, the air was clear. The storm had passed. I buckled my baby into a seat, kissed his forehead, and sat behind the wheel. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running. I was driving forward. The house I'd been kicked out of would be sold. The company my sister bragged about would rebrand. Their power would fade quietly, painfully. And me? I went home. Not to a mansion, but to peace. Because the greatest revenge wasn't taking everything back. It was never needing them again.
Power has a strange echo. When you take it away from someone, the silence it leaves behind grows louder every day. 3 weeks after the engagement, my phone rang at dawn. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Almost. "Hello?" I said quietly, stepping into the nursery so my son wouldn't wake. There was breathing on the other end, uneven, old. It's Dad." The words still felt foreign coming from him. "I don't have much time," he said, voice rough. "They're taking the house today." I closed my eyes. The same house he threw me out of in the rain. "I know," I replied calmly. Silence stretched. Then his voice cracked. "I didn't raise you to be cruel." I smiled sadly. "No," I said. "You raised me to survive." He told me everything then, how the bank accounts were frozen, how the partners stopped answering calls, how friends who once lined up to shake his hand now crossed the street to avoid him. And my sister? She left. The fiancé disappeared within 48 hours of the reveal. Her job restructured. Her confidence collapsed like a house built on sand. "She's not answering my calls," my father whispered. "You were always the strong one. Please, help us." Us. He still said us. I looked at my son, now awake, blinking up at me with trusting eyes. I remembered standing in the storm, begging. "No," I said gently. "I won't help you." His breath hitched. "So that's it? You destroy us and walk away?" "I didn't destroy you. I stopped saving you." Another pause. Then softer, smaller. "I was wrong," he said. "About everything." The words I waited my whole life to hear. They arrived when they no longer mattered. "I hope you find peace, but it won't come from me." I ended the call. That afternoon, I took my son to the park. Sunlight filtered through the trees. Children laughed. Life moved forward, indifferent to wealth, indifferent to regret. An older woman sat beside me on the bench, watching my baby play with a leaf. "He looks happy," she said. "He is. You must be doing something right." I thought about that, about how I didn't win by becoming harder. I won by becoming free. Months passed. I rebuilt quietly. Not headlines, not interviews. I funded shelters for women with children, legal aid for daughters cut off by families who called cruelty discipline, emergency housing for nights when storms came without warning. I never used my name. I didn't need to. One evening, a small envelope arrived at my door. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. Me at 8 years old, standing behind my father and sister, half cropped out of the frame. On the back, in shaky handwriting, "I see you now. I should have seen you then." I placed the photo in a drawer, not as forgiveness, as closure. That night, I tucked my son into bed, kissed his forehead, and whispered a promise. No one will ever throw you away. Outside, rain began to fall, but this time we were warm, safe, together. And the storm? It no longer followed us, because the girl who was once kicked into the dark had learned how to become the light.